Hi guys, Robbo46 here, welcome yourselves back to MotoGP 20 on the Xbox Series X. So, obviously we are racing at Valencia again, 100% race distance. If you don't want to know any results from the race and if you haven't watched it, I would suggest turning off now because we will be going into spoilers as always, and we will be discussing all three categories. So you have been warned. A little bit of housekeeping to do first. You may notice at the end of, I think it's lap 9, when I go onto the start-finish straight, it might be lap 8 actually, lap 8 or 9, I go onto the start-finish straight and the HUD will disappear, and then it will reappear into turn 1. So basically, my recording hardware decided to stop itself from recording. Usually it shows a red light when it's recording and a blue light when it is not. And I just happened to glance down and catch it at the corner of my eye when the light went from red to blue whilst I was recording this gameplay. And luckily I managed to realise straight away, so I paused the game. I went, sorted out the issue. I went into the replay section in the pause menu and just showed basically the replay for the last, well, it's basically the straight, and I do an overtake as well, so I wanted to put that back in there. And then obviously when I unpause it, because I pause it literally at the apex at turn 1, I just go off track, so that will be why the HUD disappears momentarily during this race. As I mentioned at the start of this video, it was captured on the Xbox Series X. This is actually the first time I've played this game on the new hardware. Played it a lot on the Xbox One X, wasn't a lot wrong with it. Occasionally the frame rate would dip, or that would pretty much be it. It didn't run too badly at all. Runs absolutely perfectly on the Series X. I think my previous video for the European Grand Prix, there was a few frame rate issues in that video, quite large frame rate drops occasionally during that video, but there won't be any whatsoever during this video. So yeah, it seems to perform even better on the Series X. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about that. It's loads a bit quicker as well, as you would expect, so that is that. Andrea Iannone, he is now banned for 4 years from racing motorcycles. So obviously he had that initial 18-month ban. He appealed it for the doping allegations. He finally had his hearing. And yeah, it is, well, apparently he had no sufficient evidence to prove that he was innocent. So the problem with him appealing, if he lost he would get an even longer ban, and that's exactly what's happened. So who is going to replace Iannone for next season? Aprilia don't know, because the Aprilia are struggling to get a rider, and this will bring us on to another couple bits of news. Andrea Dovizioso was in the line to take that Aprilia ride. Dovizioso has decided he'd rather take a year off, so that is what Dovizioso is doing. He's taking a year off in 2021. He doesn't want to ride the Aprilia, which, to be honest, I can't blame him. And it's a little bit weird though, because Andrea Dovizioso is expecting to come back, and obviously I'm guessing he's expecting to come back into a factory team. The trouble is, having a year away, obviously you're not going to be racing for a year, so you're going to lose that racing edge. And you know, teams may not necessarily look to him anymore if he does try to return. I think what he's also kind of hoping for, or his kind of last little lifeline for 2021, is if Marc Marquez's arm, which is still not in great condition, if it is in fact going to take even longer than first expected to heal, and he isn't going to come back for next season, then obviously Dovizioso will, you know, look to hopefully take that ride. But I expect Marquez will be back. But yeah, his arm is not looking great at the moment, but I'm sure he'll be back for next season. So yeah, Dovi don't want to ride the Aprilia, so he is taking a 1-year sabbatical. Cal Crutchlow has announced he is retiring from racing altogether. So he was another name in line with the Aprilia, and he's decided as well that he'd rather retire than get on the Aprilia, and he's decided that retiring is the right time for him in his career to retire. But he will be becoming Yamaha's official test rider for 2021, which is really interesting. Obviously, Crutchlow rode for Yamaha, albeit in the Monster Energy Tech 3 team. Had some really good results. Got on well with that bike, and yeah, he's going to be their official test rider. And he's going to be a performance test rider, so he's going to be expected to be, within at least 1 second of the top guys' times, and obviously to give some much needed feedback to develop that M1, because at the moment it's it's very fragile at the moment, and they're not consistent, which is what they're lacking at the moment. So that's pretty much the news for this weekend. Obviously, it is the penultimate round of the season, with just this race and Portimao to go, which will be the final race of the season. So we're going to start with Moto3. A Moto3, as always, is a Moto3 race, a fantastic race which just goes right down to the wire, and you have real close battles throughout the whole race. And it's a bit of an interesting one, actually, because Raul Fernandez, who you may remember won last time out, he almost had a carbon copy start to the race that he had last week, because once he got into the lead and got to the front, he led for it a little bit, and then Kaito Toba behind him crashed, and Suzuki unfortunately had nowhere to go and then hit Toba's bike, and he crashed as well. And that then opened a gap from Fernandez back to the second group, which is similar to what happened last week. Obviously last week we had was it Alonso Lopez who went into the back of Arenas, and Vietti crashed, and that opened up the gap. And we had a similar kind of situation here, and that gave Fernandez a decent enough gap. And obviously we know he's quick when he's by himself. That's why he's had lots of pole positions this season. And he tried to do what he'd done last week and just lead from the front, obviously take his own lines, and just try to click the laps off and do a similar thing to what he'd done last season. So as I said, Kaito Toba did crash with Suzuki, unfortunately, having nowhere to go. He ended up crashing as well. You had Koffler, didn't even finish the first lap, he crashed out. So not that he was really going to trouble the front runners, but obviously the championship is still up for grabs going into this round, with Arenas leading at the moment, but not by much, because obviously he had a DNF last week. I'm really surprised he didn't have a bigger penalty or an additional penalty for this race. I'm surprised they didn't at least give him a long lap penalty at some point because of what he'd done during the race last week. Obviously he got hit from behind, not his fault at all, very unlucky. He obviously then had to pull into the pit. The guys got the bike fixed, but he was 3 laps down when he went back out. And then he started interfering with a few other riders, including his championship rival Ogura, which obviously isn't a very sportsmanlike thing to do. He ended up getting black flagged for it. He wasn't going to score points anyway because he was 3 laps down. But I'm really surprised they didn't give him an additional penalty to that black flag, because that was just completely like losing his mind really, and cracking under pressure, and So he didn't have an additional penalty. He didn't have to do a long lap or anything, which, like I said, I was very, very surprised at. that he got away with that, but it is what it is. But yeah, he was in the front group, and he looked very, very on it this weekend. Obviously, last weekend he missed out on the podium. This weekend he was putting up a fierce fight, considering, you know, he's leading the championship but only by a few points. He was really giving it some, and, you know, attacking when he could, and not really taking any prisoners, which was good to see. But obviously he did put himself at risk doing stuff like that. You had Darren Binder as well. He was battling in the front group. He had a good start. Dennis Onchu as well. He was up there. You had Arbolino, who started a little bit further back, but he started making his way through the pack and managed to get to the leading group to fight with him as well. Oyagura, he was also, you know, he was in the leading pack for a little bit, but not as good a race as he had last week, and he did end up dropping back a little bit. John McPhee as well. It's well, the championship's over for McPhee anyway, and yes, seemed to be struggling a little bit at Valencia, so yeah, wasn't going to be the best of weekends for McPhee, unfortunately. But yeah, a big fight. Like I said, you had Arenas putting big moves on people. You had people putting big moves on Arenas as well, and literally just shoving it up the inside and stuff like that. But yeah, typical Moto3 race, and like I said, penultimate race. Championship still to be decided, and Tony Arbolino was the one to come out on top. He put in a really good race and pretty much judged it to perfection. We know Arbolino is quite an aggressive rider, but he, you know, got the best out of his Honda and managed to get to the front and managed to win by just over 1 second from a fellow Honda rider, Sergio Garcia, who you may remember he won at Valencia last year and was on the podium last week as well. So he came home in second position. Raul Fernandez won last time out. He got back on the podium, but this time it was only a third place for him, but, you know, still very good. And then you had Albert Arenas, who he was in the leading group on the last lap, but just got a little bit beaten up by Garcia and Fernandez on the final lap, and he slipped back down to fourth position, just ahead of Darren Binder, who finished in fifth. And you had Dennis Onchu, decent result for him, in sixth. Andrea Mino was seventh. Oyagura was 8th, so yeah, not the best of results from Oyagura, considering he got on the podium last week as well. Messia came home in 9th with Alcoba in 10th. John McPhee 11th place. Finati was 12th. Nepa was 13th. Antonelli 14th. Yamanaka 15th. Foggia in 16th. Boltus in 17th. Yuki Kuni 18th. Sasaki 19th. Pizzoli 20th. Carlos Tate in 21st, Du Pasquale in 22nd, Riccardo Rossi 23rd, and Vietti, he crashed early on in the race but did remount, and he finished in 24th place. The last of the finishers, we've already spoken about Koffler, who crashed out on lap 1. We've also spoken about Kaito Toba, who crashed, and then unfortunately Tatsuki Suzuki crashed into Toba's bike, didn't have anywhere to go. Alonso Lopez, he went down, as did Gabriel Rodrigo. They both went down at the same corner, and Howie also DNF'd in that race as well. So, Moto3, 1 race to go. The championship, as it stands, Albert Arenas still leads on 170 points. Second place is still Oyagura, but he's 8 points behind, so it's still not out of the question. And the only other person who is mathematically in it to win it, so to speak, is Tony Arbolino. After that win at Valencia, takes home third position, third in the championship now. He's actually moved up 1 position from 4th to 3rd. He's only 11 points behind, so you know, another result similar to what we had here. And, you know, you could see the likes of Toby Arbolino take the victory. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting final race at Portimao. So, from 4th downwards in the championship, none of these riders can mathematically win the title anymore. Masia, he has moved up to 4th, but he is 30 points behind now. So, the title is out of reach. Vietti, after finishing out of the points in this race, he's dropped 2 positions now from 3rd down to 5th. He's 33 points behind. Fernandez is 6th. He's moved up 1 position. He's 36 points behind. John McPhee has dropped a position to 7th now. He's 46 points behind. Darren Binder 8th, 58 behind. And Tatsuki Suzuki in 9th, 87 points behind. So it's still all to play for, and they've got 1 race to try and sort it out. Who's my money on? Honestly, haven't a clue. Obviously, they've never been to Portugal at Portimao before, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go there. I think we're going to get some cracking racing around that circuit. But yeah, no idea who it's going to suit. It's going to be an interesting race. So that was Moto 3. On to Moto 2, and it started in free practice. Unfortunately, Sam Lowe's had a horrible high side during free practice and banged up his right wrist, quite badly. Went to the medical centre, they x-rayed it, nothing was broken or fractured, but he had a very swollen right hand. And unfortunately, because of that, he's riding in a lot of pain. He didn't qualify particularly well. Morning warm-up was not great either. So yeah, obviously he crashed out at the European Grand Prix at Valencia 1. So he lost the lead in the championship to the Beast Bastianini. So yeah, it was always going to be a bit of a uphill battle for Sam Lowe's at the second Valencian race. So yeah, quite a lot of crashes in this race as well. But yeah, it was a pretty standard sort of start for Moto 2 with Marco Bezzecchi doing what he likes to do, get to the front and for pretty much straight away and tried to pull away. What he didn't expect though was the likes of Hector Garzo, Jorge Martin and Schrotter to be able to go with him for a little bit. It's also worth noting that Bastianini hasn't been quite on form at Valencia. Luca Marini as well. But Marini was looking a bit better this weekend than he had been the previous weekend. Joe Roberts, unfortunately, not quite able to kind of show the pace that he had at the first Valencia race. Obviously, he qualified well at that race. And unfortunately crashed out whilst leading, but he wasn't really towards the leading group in this particular race. But yeah, so Bezzecchi, like I said, he tried to do what he has been doing and how he's won before this season and just set the pace at the front. And he's pretty good at being a pace setter as Bezzecchi. He can get to the front and set a pace that it might not be a huge amount quicker than anyone else, but he can do it, you know, a tenth, 3 tenths quicker per lap. Sometimes even just matching the pace of the guys behind, and then just like extending by a couple of tenths every other lap. And that's usually enough for him to obviously take the victory. And it was looking that way, but a couple of mistakes from him, and the likes of Digi Antonio was hot on his heels of Bezzecchi, and yeah, it was looking like it was going to be a pretty decent fight for Moto 2. Like I said, we did have quite a few crashes. We had Marcos Ramirez, he ended up crashing out, as did Andy Isdihart. Stefano Manzi, who qualified on pole position on the MV Augusta. Obviously it's an MV frame but a Triumph engine. he was in, I think, about 4th or 5th place for quite a bit of the race. But unfortunately, he ended up crashing out. But it was good to see him on some sort of form and being pretty quick, and see him in a position that we've not actually seen him be in before. So maybe Manzi is just starting to get to grips a little bit better with a Moto2 machine. Maybe we're going to see a bit more from him in the future. Lorenzo Dalla Porta, the reigning Moto3 world champion, the misery continues for him in Moto2. He ended up crashing out. Jorge Navarro, he was inside the top 10, but unfortunately he ended up crashing out on the speed up. His fellow speed up rider Aaron Canet, he ended up crashing out as well. Edgar Pons also crashed out, and another rider crashed out, which we'll talk about in a second. But that will be the last rider that did crash out of the race. So Sam Lowes, we'll talk about him for a little bit. Qualified way down. Beginning of the race, he was down in about 22nd, 21st position. To begin with, it was looking like he wasn't really realistically going to be able to get into the points. But as the race progressed, obviously a few people crashed out. Sam managed to pick his pace up, and at one point he was actually running the same pace as second place at the time, and the people that were in front of him were in the 37s, and Sam was in the 35s, so he was able to fight and to make some overtakes and obviously make some positions up. One of them being his teammate. Once he got past his teammate Augusto Fernandez obviously didn't try to re-attack Sam and get back past him. Obviously Fernandez, he's smart, he knows what's on the line at the moment. But Sam did manage to get into the points and salvage a couple of points in the championship. Obviously it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But at least he did pick up some points. I just hope that his hand is going to be... realistically, it should be in a much better condition by the final race. It will just depend. He was going to, at time of recording, he was going to have another scan just to, double check to make sure nothing is fractured or broken. And then hopefully the swelling will go down. Because he did say during the race that once his hand went a little bit numb, it actually helped him, and he was able to ride a bit more smooth, especially through the right-handers. Obviously, with it being the right hand, which is throttle and brake, he was struggling a little bit, but still showed some really good pace despite being injured. But at the front, Fabio Di Giannantonio managed to get into the lead past Marco Bezzecchi and actually start to pull away a little bit on the final lap. Di Giannantonio put in about half a second in between himself and Marco Bezzecchi, who was second at the time. But unfortunately for Digi, he managed to tuck the front, and he done that turn 6, which is what we're actually coming up to after this next corner. He tucked the front whilst leading on the final lap, unfortunately, and down he went. And that obviously sparked something in Jorge Martin and Hector Garzo, who are obviously now they were with Marco Bezzecchi, and they could see an opportunity to win the race, and both of them pretty much beat up Bezzecchi, because Jorge Martin done a little bit of a surprise attack into turn 12, which Bezzecchi wasn't expecting. Jorge Martin went through, and then Hector Garzo managed to force his way through as well. So Jorge Martin went on to win the race, with Hector Garzo taking a second position and Marco Bezzecchi completing the podium in third. Obviously Bezzecchi, with that third place, he is still within the chance of the championship. Marcel Schrotter came home in fourth position, Luca Marini was 5th. Enea Bastianini was 6th. Obviously, Marini and the Beast are in the championship as well. Bastianini leading the championship at the moment. Remy Gardner was 7th. Bo Ben Snyder in 8th. That's actually a decent result for Ben Snyder there inside the top 10. As it is with Bulliger as well, who ended up in 9th. Lorenzo Baldassari was 10th with Joe Roberts in 11th. Nagashima 12th. Vierge in 13th. Sam Lowes took home 14th place and those 2 crucial points. And his teammate Augusto Fernandez was the final point scoring position in 15th. Then you had Thomas Luthi in 16th, Simone Corsi 17th, Chandra in 18th, Sire in 19th, Danielle in 20th, and Bisegurski in 21st. So, Moto 2, just like Moto 3, goes down to the final race. The Beast, Bastianini, leads the championship on 194 points. Sam Lowes is still in 2nd place, 14 points behind. Luca Marini is still in 3rd, 18 points behind. And Marco Bezzecchi is still in 4th, 23 points behind. So those 4 are the only ones that can win the championship now. It's a bit of an ask for Bezzecchi to win. He would need his competitors to have some serious bad luck at the final race for him to obviously to win, for him to be crowned the championship. So it's advantage Bastianini at the moment, but you know, anything can happen, and it'll be interesting to see what does happen at the final race. So 5th position in the championship is Jorge Martin. He's 44 points behind. Then we got Remy Gardner in 6th, 84 points behind. Nagashima in 12th, 105 points behind. Joe Roberts 8th in 8th. Did I say Nagashima was 12th? Nagashima is 7th, 105 points behind. Joe Roberts 8th, 109 points behind. And Marcel Schrott has actually moved up 4 positions into 9th place, 117 points behind. So that is Moto 2 now. So off to Moto 3. Obviously we had the news about Iannone. We had the news about Dovi and Crutchlow. We also had the news that Icolo Cuono could not race because he had another positive virus test. So unfortunately he wasn't able to race again, even though he had a negative one, but then he ended up having another positive one, so he couldn't race. And yeah, it was a good race actually. You know, the championship is still to be decided coming into this race, with Joan Mir having the advantage, and Quartararo, he had it all to do. Qualifying didn't go to plan, really struggling to get his Yamaha set up. Had a crash during free practice, but both Quartararo and Mir didn't particularly qualify very well. 11th and 12th place, Quartararo 11th and Mir in 12th, which obviously isn't great for them. But come the race, and yeah, it was a good launch for Jack Miller, who managed to lead by turn 1, although he did end up going a little bit wide. In fact, he went very wide and went off track, which then gave Franco Morbidelli the lead. Miller tried to fight with him for a bit, but wasn't able to. He did stay with Morbidelli for a little bit and then dropped back a bit. Paul Espargaro as well got a good start, and yeah, he was trying to stay with the front two. It was a nightmare start for Quartararo into turn 2. He rushed in there a little bit too hot, outbraked himself, clipped Maverick Vinales, and sent himself wide at turn 2. So that then dropped Quartararo down to last place in the race. And obviously he had to then try and fight his way back through the pack, and on a bike that he's not comfortable on at the moment, and is struggling to find a setup that works for him. He's definitely been having some front end issues with the bike as well. Yeah, he had it all to do, and yeah, it was looking like his title hopes were going to be in tatters basically at the start of the race. But as the race progressed, Morbidelli broke away from Jack Miller a little bit. Pol Espargaro was still there, trying to fight for second place with Jack Miller. Alex Rins was making his way through the field, trying to obviously end up on the podium because he was still within a chance mathematically of the title. And also Brad Binder done a very good job at working his way through the field as well. Oliveira was running fourth for quite a bit of the race, and then he got overtaken by both Rins and Brad Binder. Mir, he managed to get up to about 8th place and managed to kind of isolate himself so that he had a gap behind him and a gap ahead of him, and yeah, just looking very, very safe, as pretty much what he needed to do, obviously, to try and win that championship. And yeah, a bit further back you had Andrea Dovizioso as well, making his way through the pack. You had Vinales and Rossi trying to fight their way through, as well as Crutchlow. Alex Marquez had a good start, but he had a monster high side during qualifying. Very lucky to get away relatively uninjured. He was obviously very, very sore, and that was that became very apparent during the race when yeah, he had a good start and ran, you know, a decent pace, but unfortunately he ended up dropping back towards the latter part of the race, obviously due to the pain. Bagnaia ran off track at the beginning of the race as well, and he dropped himself back a few positions, but he tried to fight his way back through the field as well. Quartararo was making progress, and then yeah, it was not meant to be. Zarco, he was running really well as well, actually. He was top, not top Ducati, but second best Ducati for a little while. He just got ahead of, I think it was Alex Rins, but as soon as he got in front of him, tipped into turn one and lost the front, and down went Zarco. And then literally 3 laps later, Quartararo, he ended up going down as well, and that was Quartararo's title chance. Well, it was a very slim chance anyway, but that was it, completely gone. And yeah, he was no longer going to be fighting for the title. Nakagami, he was showing some really good pace. He worked his way up through the top 5 throughout the race, and then with 9 laps to go, he managed to put himself up the inside of Pol Espargaro for 3rd position through turn 13. But unfortunately, he then ended up tucking the front and going down, and unfortunately crashing out. Luckily for Pol, he was able to pick his bike up to avoid Nakagami. Obviously, Pol wouldn't have been very happy if he had been collected, but Pol Espargaro did manage to consolidate that 3rd position. So yeah, only 3 DNFs with Nakagami, Quartararo and Zarco crashing out. But yeah, with Nakagami crashing out, that promoted Joan Mir to 7th. 8th place would have been good enough, but 7th place across the line, and Joan Mir was crowned the 2020 MotoGP World Champion. So he'd done it well, and yeah, huge congratulations to him. Franco Morbidelli, he was the one who went on to win the race. However, we did have a fantastic battle between himself and Jack Miller on the final lap, because Miller started setting some fastest laps of the race, and he managed to close back in on Morbidelli towards the end of the race. And yeah, he managed to put a few moves on Morbidelli. Morbidelli put a few moves back on Miller, but it was Morbidelli who ended up taking the victory overall. Jack Miller took home a very impressive second position, and just to show how close it was between the two, Morbidelli crossed the line 900ths of a second ahead of Miller. So Jack Miller, good second place. Paul Espargaro came home in third position, so good third position from him. Alex Rins came home in fourth. He was actually catching Paul Espargaro, but did run out of time. But a good fourth position for Alex Rins. Brad Binder, he ended up in fifth position. He did manage to consolidate that fifth position after getting past Oliveira earlier on in the race. Miguel Oliveira ended up in sixth position. Decent result for him. As we've already said, Joan Mir took seventh place, which was enough to secure the 2020 World Championship. Andrea Dovizioso was 8th, with Alicia Spargo on the Aprilia in 9th. Maverick Vinales was 10th, Bagnaia 11th, Rossi in 12th, Cal Crutchlow 13th, Bradle took home 14th, and Danilo Petrucci was the last point scorer in 15th place. 16th place was Alex Marquez, 17th was Tito Rabat, and 18th place was Lorenzo Savadori. So that was it. That was MotoGP, and that was the championship. So yeah, Joan Mir took the championship. He goes to the final race of the season with a 29-point lead. Obviously 25 points for a race win. So he done it. He wrapped it up with one race to go, so he can go to Portimao and just enjoy the track. Franco Morbidelli, with that win, actually shot himself up to second position. He moved up 3 positions. So yeah, he is now second position of the championship. Alex Rins is third, 33 points behind. Rins will be trying to get more points than Morbidelli at the final race to try and get that Suzuki 1-2 in the championship. Maverick Vinales is in fourth position, 44 points behind. Fabio Quartararo has now dropped from second to fifth place. He's basically traded places with his teammate Morbidelli. So yeah, Quartararo down to fifth, 46 points behind. He's joint on point with Andrea Dovizioso, who's sixth on 125 points, so 46 points behind. Paul Espargaro 7th, he is 49 points behind. Jack Miller's moved up to 8th, 59 points behind. And Nakagami is now 9th, 66 points behind. So that is the championship wrapped up. Like I said, there's still one race to go. It's going to be really interesting to see how the MotoGP bikes go around Portimao and how the racing is around there. Looking forward to seeing how Moto3 and Moto2 wrap up, and to see who those champions are going to be. But yeah, the 2020 MotoGP World Champion is Joan Mir on the Suzuki. Suzuki's first Rider Championship since Kenny Roberts Jr. in the year 2000. Let's not forget, Joan Mir, he's only won one race this season, which was ultimately the last race here at the first Valencia race. Yeah, he's only won one race, and he's won the championship. He's managed to do it by only one race. However, he has been the most consistent rider. He's been on the podium countless times, and he's finished when it mattered, and he's scored decent points throughout the whole season. So a well-deserved championship. Will be interesting to see if he can get a second win of the season at Portimao. If not, we could be looking at a champion who only won one race during the season. But as we know, 2020 has been a very, very weird season. At the very beginning, before the season even began, obviously everyone was expecting Marc Marquez to pick off where he left off in 2019. Obviously, we had the whole virus pandemic in the world, and all the racing got delayed. And then when we did go racing at Jerez for the first round, we saw Marquez crash and really injure himself, and he hasn't been back. Wait, he tried to run at the second Jerez race, but only managed free practice and didn't actually get to race, and we haven't seen him since. So 2020 has been a very weird season. No one was dominant. Obviously Quartararo has won 3 races. Morbidelli has now won 3 races. We had Dovizioso, who's won a race. We've had Brad Binder, who's won a race. We've had Oliveira, who's won a race. We've had Mir, who's won a race. We've had Rins, who's won a race. So it's been we've had Petrucci, who's won a race as well. So we've had 9 different winners, and ultimately, I did say at the beginning of the season, it's going to be the rider who can be the most consistent, not necessarily the rider who wins the most races. And that is exactly what's happened. So huge congratulations to Mir, and obviously Suzuki as well. And yeah, 1 race to go of this season. I can't wait to see who's going to be Moto3 and Moto2 world champion. And then that will be it for this season. Obviously, we don't have Portimao in the MotoGP 20 game, so not sure what I'm going to do yet. I might do Laguna Seca or something, or I might do an endurance race at Portimao on Ride 4. Haven't decided yet, but I will sort something out. But that is it, guys. Your MotoGP 2020 World Champion has been confirmed as Joan Mir aboard the Suzuki. But that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more content. I shall see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to stay safe and to wash your hands. See you.